Okay, so hi everyone. We are on the community committee meeting for September 14th, 2017. We are going to run through the list of people that we've got attending today's call. I think the best way to do that is looking at our invited list for the meeting if you're present. I would say go first, and I think that is Jen.
I'm Jen, Turner, Renrat and Edge on GitHub, and Jen Writes on Twitter, and I am one half of the secretaries for the community committee.
The next is Joe.
Hey, I'm Joe Seppi. I'm an observer here on ComCom, developer advocate for IBM in New York City. Thanks.
Let's see, we have Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel White. I am Rachel Nicole on GitHub and Oho on Twitter, and I am a technical evangelist for Microsoft in New York City.
Hi, I'm Tierney Siren. I'm at BNB on GitHub and at Bit and Bang on Twitter, and I am a developer evangelist, developer advocate for NodeSource and the other half of the secretaries for the community committee.
I am Tracy Hines. So my account is showing up, I believe, as the green Node hex. I am the education community manager for the Node Foundation and a member of the community committee. I believe the next is William.
Hey, William Kepke. I am individual director and member of community committee.
And lastly, I think we had Michael hop on.
Yeah, hi, I'm Michael Dawson. I'm a community committee member as well as the TSC chair.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so I think we're just gonna dive right in. Oh, I'm so sorry, Rafael. I'm so sorry.
So I'm Rafael Ackerman. I'm a core collaborator for Node. I'm located in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Awesome, welcome, Rafael. Okay, so I think we're gonna hop into the agenda items from there. The first up is our discussion around electing a new chairperson. Nominations have closed for that. So the two folks we have running are Tierney and Rachel. Our next step is to host the election. After discussion online, we were trying to figure out what was the best means and method to have this election. There is some precedence in other parts of the project on how they vote. That doesn't mean that it's the way that we want to vote. And so it looks like, although we can discuss this here, that what we'll do is a secret ballot. So that means that even myself, if I'm administering the poll through software, will not know how people voted, but we are given the final tally. Does anybody have any thoughts around that? There's a couple projects that we can use for this, and I would prefer for it if, you know, we had talked about, I think the compromise was instead of showing how everyone has voted for the candidates, we would just have the result be public. Does anybody have objections to that? Okay, feel free to raise your hand or poke me if you would like to voice that outside of the Hangout. And so then that would mean that we are going to move forward with the secret ballot. And as part of that, we have some options for us. And I'm happy with, I think the one that I had pulled up. Let me actually, apologies, I should have actually shared this link ahead of time. There's a couple different methods that you can use. The LF overall actually uses a system called CIVS, which is the Condorcet method. So you actually rank people as opposed to just selecting like one or another. But that also is not private. So we won't be using that. There were some other options, I believe DECS, or yeah, I'll post the link, I apologize. It's decing.com. So it's decisions through secret and private votes that I will post in our chat just for folks to be able to look at that later. That's likely what I'm going to be using because I do want it to be obscured from myself as well. If you have others that you suggest, that's great. The next question I believe that we have around this was the amount of time that we want to have this open. So just from a PR standpoint, when we talk about decision making and honoring different time zones, the minimum is generally 48 hours. So I would say that if we don't have everyone vote, if everyone votes, if we know that the count has been completed and all members have voted, then we can close the election earlier. But otherwise, I would say we need to set a minimum window of time for people to be able to vote. I believe William had expressed online that he would like it to be 4 days. Does anybody have any other suggestions? Otherwise, that's what I would probably, 48 hours is my notion just from other precedents, but that's not precedents in voting. Otherwise, I would take William's suggestion.
Isn't there a way to just monitor whenever everyone who is able to vote has voted? That way it can be 4 days or when everyone has voted?
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, that's what I was saying is like if everyone has voted before the 4 days, would that be acceptable to be done with the election? And otherwise we would set the minimum as saying you have 4 days.
Yeah, definitely. And just to be clear, the 4 days was Brian's. I was just echoing what Brian had
Oh,
written
okay.
down.
I'm sorry. What? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I was thinking either 76 or 90, however many hours. So 3 or 4 days would probably be a better option than 48, just because I do know we have people with varying availability and work commitments.
Yep. And then at 48, we're also getting into the weekend, so that can be tough too. Okay. So if there's any objections, I'm going to say 4 days for the election window, with the option being able to close the election early if all eligible members have voted.
I do have a question about eligible members. Is an observer an eligible member at this point?
From our governance, the observers are not voting members.
Okay.
They do not have a vote, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay.
But thank you for asking that to clarify. And as part of that, as part of the distribution tyranny of the votes, I believe that I have to manually enter the emails for everyone who gets an access key to vote. So I don't actually they obscure it through a weird way so that also I know whoever has their access keys, but I don't get to see, the access keys aren't even necessarily applied in that same way to the vote itself.
I do know that there's a few people who aren't on the email list. I believe Emily Rose, Michelle, Garrett, and then Miles might not be on it. But we should probably make sure we have them as well. Yeah,
we need to. We actually need to update, I believe, members list as well, because even for the meeting today, I used the wrong list. So that was my fault. Let me...
In terms of the tool you're going to use, is there? I think it would be useful to document that somewhere. I don't know if it's the same one that has been used for the TSC elections in the past, but it'd be good to, like, say here's the standard way to do it, and have it an easy place to point people to if we need to do this again.
Yeah, I agree, Michael, because I was actually trying to find out what the TSC had used, and I wasn't having the easiest time with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one it was. I don't know if it's something that Michael Rogers had actually used in the past, and I think James just asked him and used the same thing. But if you have something, like if the one that you are referring to actually means that even the organizer can't see the results, I think that's even better.
Yeah, I agree. And there's options for even that, but I do think, like, we're certainly not using the existing voting system that Node uses for the annual individual elections, because we're migrating away from that system. But even that doesn't, well, I guess it does. Yeah, it shows that people voted. It does not show who they selected. So that's another nice, way for people to verify, like, who voted. But we're not using that anymore. So yeah, I would love to. I'm also open if TSC is using a similar tool, but it sounds like the admin knows the final.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but that was my impression. That
was my impression too.
Admin would know, and if we're not going to have everybody know, then it's better than just nobody. I just don't think there was an option with that tool. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that it's it's tough when you have somebody administering, because I think then they either should not be a part of the group that's voting, because otherwise there's, if you look ahead of time, you're potentially able to, change the outcome. So that's not cool. This would be ideal. It'd be a nice test as well if other people want to adopt whatever we end up using. So yay for setting examples.
Yeah, I think if we just write down, here's the steps for using it, and you're free to use something else, but this is one we recommend unless you have a good reason.
Cool. All right. Sounds good to me. Okay. And anybody have any other questions around that? If not, what I'll set that up after the meeting. Cool. All right. Let's see. So on to the next agenda item. Okay. So the next agenda item, I actually have two items sort of connected together, and one was a PR and one was an issue, because I think that they're sort of intertwined. So William was kind enough to file a PR sharing the conduct commitment that he had drafted. And I think that this is a potential solution being offered towards the issue that I have also linked, which is to document the guidelines for accountability expectations for all members of the TSC, CTC, and ComCom. So that's a I'm very wordy with titles. The reason that these are important to consider together, I believe, is that that's what the aim is, right? The aim of these, and the reason that those groups are named is because they are leadership groups. And it is not within our scope to be able to write guidelines for the board, as an example. But we can, as groups, work together on these guidelines. And I think that that's why that issue is important to look at alongside what William was offering. So I think there were some disagreements on the commitment statement and sort of that as the method for us to communicate leadership guideline values. So I'd be interested to hear if folks think, my suggestion is taking what William has written as a PR, and also the really good feedback that we've gotten in that issue regarding guidelines for accountability, and sort of combining those into a leadership document, a leadership guideline PR. So instead of saying as individuals, we sign this statement, that we will, instead we are actually creating something, actual explicit, things that we are expected to do, but aren't necessarily beholden to tooling such as a tweet. Has anybody, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
Wouldn't just whatever moderation guidelines or code of conduct changes cover this?
No, because the moderation guidelines are for everyone who is participating in Node. And what this is, and I think what William, I would love your feedback on this. The point of that statement is to say that these committee members need to be held to a higher standard, because our actions don't necessarily, single actions, for good or for worse, don't necessarily violate code of conduct, but can add up to a pattern of driving folks away from the project. And as leaders, we have to build a pattern of being welcoming and supportive of the project. That does not mean that you can't object to things happening in the project or be a dissident, but it means that overall you are being supportive and trying to be helpful. And that's something that we've seen over the past couple of years, we've struggled as a community to voice, is that our leaders across the board are being held to this regardless. So they are being held to this, I will say this. So this is codifying guidelines of expectations that have been communicated from many different types of people in different parts of the community, from the board to ecosystem to other people that are collaborators, and saying like, yes, we agree, we should be held to this. And when we are stepping outside of these boundaries, when we mess up, people should be able to talk to us and say like, yeah, these are things that are expected of us.
I have a huge problem with that personally. Not saying that like I don't know how to control myself, obviously, because I do, but I think that it just leaves people up for more scrutiny. Like, it's the changes that are being made for the code of conduct, which applies to everybody, that's fine. Those are, guidelines that people know to follow. But this just seems like anybody that is putting themselves out there to try and make things better are going to be opened up to a whole nother level of like, I guess I don't want to say scrutiny again, but like,
yeah, no, it is.
I don't want to say like, yeah, it was easy for William to post that because he doesn't really live in the social spaces that a lot of us, like a lot of other members of us do. So like, I mean, I don't want to feel like I'm going to have to go check every single online user profile I've ever made for the past 10 years and see like if people disagree with a moderation decision or a community committee decision that I've made, that people are going to be coming after me.
So I would say first with that is that, so as part of TSC and as part of community committee, people do have to recognize that we are being held to a higher level of scrutiny because we are making decisions for the entire project. We are making decisions that affect 8 million users.
I agree. I know, but I'm just saying this seems like it just gives, like the scrutiny is going to be there anyway. Why add more fodder for the people that are going to do it anyway?
Because we have to explicitly state our values at some point and what is expected of us, or people will just say that like, well, as we've seen, is that we're allowed, as leaders, we're allowed to do whatever as long as it doesn't violate the code of conduct, and it's like, okay.
I do think it's definitely, Michael submitted a PR to the TSC repo. He shared it in the Google chat there.
Yeah.
Definitely
going
worth
on
reading
in
that.
To add that.
Yeah, it's definitely worth reading that, and also,
yeah,
I think it is fundamentally different than some of the previous things that have been kind of submitted. And I do think it, it does. One of those things that I was worried about as well is, having to go scrub every single thing anyone in the project has ever done that's a member of the TSC or ComCom. That's not something we should ever have to do as part of this. And
No.
And it's explicit in kind of stating that. And I even made a comment on part of that to try to kind of get clarification. And it's very collaborative right now, and I definitely suggest going through and reading that and then commenting on anything if there's any specific issues with it. It's a pretty well written doc so far, and I definitely think everyone here should probably try to take some time to go just review it and either give a +1 or -1 or give feedback on it.
And we should we'll absolutely, if we get consensus on something like this, it's absolutely we've documented this is the expectation going forward, right? It's not if anybody comes back and says, well, in the past people, we don't care, right? Like we didn't set these expectations, so they don't apply to anything in the past. It's like going forward, this is what we're going to try and hold ourselves to.
Right. It might be a bit much to say we don't care, but it is, like in my PR, I specifically said it's during my tenure, and that's very important. Whether people like it or not, the greater public is going to judge this committee and all of the committees on who they surround themselves with on that committee, who they allow to be on the committee. And when things don't go well, we have lots of proof out there that someone's going to start digging through past and throwing it like, here's a person that says this, and they're on this committee, and they feel this way. And we need to have some guidelines in place where we can say, well, that is something that they had in their past, and during their tenure on the committee, they didn't reflect those values and those views. And that, the individual can say something if they want about their past, but as far as the committee is concerned, we have a guideline.
Yeah, that's like, to a certain extent, we've definitely heard that, folks across, the community as of late saying like, it's really hard to hold people to rules that have been put in place on actions that were long before the rules were in place. And that's a tough argument.
And I do think that this specific document that Michael submitted as a PR is definitely a good step to being able to be accountable in the future for things like what's happened recently with the 2 instances. That'll kind of allow us to have a framework to go to when it happens again, if it does happen again.
So I was on active observer of the things that are going on. I think there were more than 2 instances of reports coming in from the community about personal statements made by, let's call them leadership figures. And de facto, what we did was, or what the resolution was something similar to what William was referring to, saying this came in the past, these are not representative of the values the person has shown in the project, and please refrain from personal attacks. So I can think about 5 or 6 of those that were happening on GitHub in the last month.
Yeah, and to expand on it is more than 2. There are some that are waiting to see how things pan out before submitting more reports that I know of. So it is important that we get this worked out in a great, perfect way. Maybe perfect's too strong, but
yeah, I think that's something that's been communicated a number of times, is that it's very difficult to hold people to expectations that you didn't have explicitly communicated. And then there, of course, right, is the problem that we see is codifying those explicit expectations can be very challenging because people know that once we have them codified, you're being held to them. So, yeah.
I'm reading through the issue now, and like I have things that I have issues with, so I'll just comment it on the issue.
On the pull request or the issue?
The pull request.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I would say like they're definitely looking for feedback there. I think I would like to read through that again as well. So thank you, Michael, for posting that and y'all bringing attention to that. I should have linked this one instead.
Yeah, I think we'll have several rounds of feedback. So there's been one where I incorporated some. There's a bunch of comments since then, and I'm just waiting for a little bit more to come in, and we'll keep refining it based on the feedback.
Yeah, and honestly, this is something that would be really beautiful to share with the board because they've been looking for people to lead on these messages as well. So it's nice to see this coming from the project side to be able to say like this is a good step forward for everyone. So please give input to that, folks. So okay, so any other questions on that? I'm glad that folks are reading that now.
Are we moving forward with the pull request?
Oh, so with that pull request, it's that, which pull request? Sorry, Jen.
The individualized conduct commitments.
One from William?
Yeah.
I don't think we're moving forward with that, as far as I can tell. I actually almost closed it because all we'd had was kind of -1s. I almost went and closed it today. I don't think we are. I believe it is just being held open for this discussion here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so William, are you comfortable with that? Because I think that if we were to close it, we should comment on the PR why it's being closed without merge.
Yeah, it's a PR. The committee's free to reject it. Personally, I thought that it would just get accepted and sit in the repo, and nobody would ever notice it. Unfortunately, it went more of an escalated route, and people felt they needed to participate in it. Which was not my expectation, but yeah, go ahead, reject it.
Okay, but yeah, Tierney, I would ask if you are going to close that you'll post why.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe add a link to, I don't know if part of the rationale is to wait till the discussion in 339 is complete. You could.
I do think that would be a good.
That as a.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. It's just redirecting the energy, right? It's saying like we totally believe in the intention, I think, of what William was trying to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so on to the next agenda item. The item is issue 125. Email alias is not up to date with the membership list. I will share that the only people who ended up on the email alias were folks who had explicitly expressed that they were okay with their emails being on there because it is public. It is published to the repo.
Yep.
So I was not okay with putting anyone on there, even if they are members. For this, I would just, I guess I can also send a private email to everyone on that list asking whether they would like to be added because we didn't get the full eyes of the members on the issue that was open at the time.
People can always PR themselves into the list too.
That's, yeah, very true. And that is way nicer because then it's very clear that they gave permission.
I have a PR waiting out there. It's just not in our purview to.
I already landed that earlier.
Okay.
Oh, you did? I didn't see that yet. Thanks.
Yeah. And the thing is, it also takes, it takes it being landed and then the mail alias is being updated, and there's only a few of us who can do that. So if you do have one, maybe at CC me, because I can do both at the same time.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, so I think the action item from there then is just to ping everyone who is missing from, put a diff on the email list versus the active members, and reach out to them to PR themselves onto the email list. Yeah, because otherwise what ends up happening is they aren't getting communications that are private to the ComCom and not being posted in public. So just like their participation. Okay. And then I think the last item that I had documented was issue 96. So this was just reporting back from our user feedback initiative meeting yesterday, which I think was really productive. And this is a really important initiative. So what this essentially is in the short is that it is us project managing and implementing more ways to get clear feedback from the wider ecosystem and members. And that is vital because we should be making our decisions about how we are moving forward in the project based off of evidence. So that is helpful. And one of the things that we realized when we were discussing this yesterday was that we have a lot of work in the community committee, in the TSC, in various parts of the project. And it's really tough to get people to do, right? So we've got people who want to help out in various parts of the project. They don't know how to get started. And when we come up with things like the user feedback initiative, we know it's going to be really valuable, but we need people. So what Tierney and Michael and I came up with was that it would be really awesome if we did a weekly share out by tweet or whatever social media you are using, and saying we need help with X this week, right? So we need help in general with the community committee and the project, but it's really nice to have like an issue that we can point at and say like we need help with this. We would love to have someone to come help us on this particular thing, right? So I could tweet and say, we're starting a user feedback initiative. We're going to be, building out surveys and a plan for that. If you're interested, please let us know. And that's just a nice way to continue to encourage people and also let them know specifically what they can help on. So what I was thinking with that is that as community committee members, if you don't want to do that work yourself, we can still send out an email and say like, hey, can y'all boost this tweet that one of us, sent out that's really important and we could use help on. Does that sound like something that would be, y'all would be willing to help out with?
I want, for sure. I just want to say that Twitter, this whole thing has a problem with selection bias, but Twitter narrows our audience very much. I think it's used predominantly in the States, and most of my acquaintances that are not American are not avid Twitter fans. So I'm taking a lot of the tweets to places like Facebook or different social media channels.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I was going to say was that I use Twitter as the example, but we also like whatever social media platform is useful to you and your network and helps connect us is what you should be using for this. So some people will use Twitter because that's where they live. Some people will use IRC chat, right? Some people will use Cnode. So it's just whatever platform you live in. That would be extremely helpful, because that's what we want, is to kind of, you know, dig out into these very different communities that we aren't reaching as often as we need to. That's great.
I think that's great, especially coming from, you know, community committee.
Cool. All right. Well, okay. So is the best way to do that like emailing the community committee? Like, would y'all, if we do that once a week, is that reasonable? Is that obnoxious? Is email the best way to do that?
I don't mind.
Yeah.
You know, that works for me, but I don't want to speak for anyone else.
It's fine with me too.
Fine with me.
Yeah, me as well. I'm getting a lot of emails anyway.
Yeah.
I think we'd even, one of the things we talked about too was even like Tierney had mentioned, he'd send, you know, periodically sends out just the general, so, you know, the general one saying, hey, we just need help in general.
Yep.
And maybe rotating that across, you know, it seems funny if one person does it every week, but if we sort of rotate it across the committee members, where each week we sent one of those out and then kind of promoted it, that might also be something to do.
Yeah, let me give others in the meeting a little bit of context. So a while ago, I sent out just a ask saying, if you want to start contributing to Node, please just reach out to me. And I've had a bunch of people reach out from varying backgrounds, skill levels, you know, everything from you know, an entirely new beginner to people that are experienced that are working in large organizations. So it's been several people who have reached out to me, quite a few, and it's been easy to help them. Just, you know, they generally say, hey, this is what I could probably do, or this is what I'm interested in doing. Where can I get started? Because they generally don't know. And so I'm around the project a lot, and so I generally know those things. We're also working on the getting started repo that's kind of trying to collect some of that information of where you can get started in each kind of section of the org. And so just being able to share that and say, hey, here's where, if you're interested in doing docs, you can go to the getting started or the main repo, get good first contribution that's also tagged docs or labeled docs. It's an easy way to help someone get started, and like a few of them have already landed commits, and they're, you know, it was an awesome thing for them to be able to go do. They were excited. So it's a simple thing to kind of low effort on our end, or at least it was low effort on my end. It's an assumption, but you know, it's not super difficult, and I'm happy to help if anyone wants to kind of have guidance around that, but it's a useful thing to kind of get more contributions going.
Do we have any sort of a working group that is geared towards getting more people involved in contributing?
There's evangelism, and then there is that getting started repo, which is a shared repo between the TSC and community committee.
Yeah, but that would be, yes, if you want to help with that, that would be swell.
Yep.
I just want to comment from the core collaborators side that I think we have roughly, let's say, one person a week who is coming for a second round of tutoring/mentoring. After doing their first commit, they want to step it up, and that, I think that segment is a little bit lacking. Like, okay, so we have good first contribution. What's a good second contribution?
Yeah, that's a good point. So do you participate much in the Code and Learn repo?
No, personally, no, but I have some PRs on core about thoughts and insights that I've collected.
Yeah, so that's
follow up.
Code and Learn, you know, the original aim, of course, was getting those good first contributions. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't expand outside of that. And I think there has been discussion around like sort of whether that's the appropriate place to continue that focus. But the getting started is a very wide swath. So getting started can mean getting started in Node. from like not being a programmer or being a programmer coming from another language. It could be getting started in contributing. It could be, you know, trying to move beyond that first, getting started beyond that first contribution. So if you have ideas for that, that would be awesome to document, because that's, getting started is more of the place of that, like those ideas and those resources. And then Code and Learn, right, is the implementation of that as an event for core contributions, at least.
Yeah, I took note. And then contribution, I obviously mean things like, you know, helping with the website, helping with content, giving feedback. Like you're talking about user feedback initiative. Giving feedback is basing decisions on evidence is a value that I see that needs to be pushed forward.
Oh, cool. All right. Do we have any other questions or statements around that last agenda point?
Can we get help from the main Node.js account too on Twitter?
Oh, yeah.
Stuff?
Yeah.
And to Raphael's point, we could also probably do that on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. I know you can share a post on Facebook, so I assume we can send that to y'all.
Yeah, and we have the official Node accounts on, I believe, LinkedIn and also Facebook. Yeah, we can reshare on those as well. And that's often the point I think that it's important, is that if you do have something that you, there are ways that we can boost that. But yeah, the official Node accounts, if it's, yeah.
In this case, it would be nice to say, like, if we're going to do this, to say, okay, you know, how do you get the Node.js account to retweet? Is it that we, you know, after having tweeted, we send an email to X to request that, or how?
So generally, you can DM the Node account. It is up to the managers of the account as to whether they will retweet. I will say that.
Sure.
So it's we try to be careful just from a strategy standpoint with the Node account, because we don't want to flood it with so many messages in a day that so sometimes they'll actually, like, sometimes it gets paced out a little bit.
Right. I just meant that, yeah, if we're planning to do these, it's just they should maybe, you know, expect them to be coming, and so that when they see them, they say, oh yeah, okay. Other than if there's been too many or something today, we're just going to forward them on.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, it's being paid attention to, and they'll try and just retweet it anyway. But if you have a specific ask, it's always good to DM. If you're talking about Twitter specifically. Otherwise, you would want to email. I believe it would be Zibby and I. I don't think we have like a tweet at nodejs.org or a social media at nodejs.org.
We don't. We could create one if we wanted to, but
yeah, that's true. I'll circle back. I'll talk to Zibby and Sarah,
Sure.
our comms team, and see their thoughts on how the approach on that, so that there isn't a flood.
Sure. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And managing expectations.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Any other? Does anybody have any other topics that they'd like to bring up? Otherwise, I think that we're need to just look at any questions from the community, if there are any. I'm not seeing any on the issue.
I'll look at YouTube real quick.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Yeah, there's none.
All right.
I don't see any.
Okay. Well, then we get 7 minutes back. Oh, wait. Is there a question?
Just technical questions around asking about Electron.
I'm trying to think of who would be best in the project to be able to answer those questions. I don't like to say, well, that's just not our scope, but who can we point to?
You could try the help repo.
Yeah.
Going and posting in an issue in the help repo in Node.js, github.com/node.js/help. That would be a good place to go ask a question and either have someone be able to help you with it or go and direct you to the person who can.
Yeah, I know a few people that I could direct them to if that question gets filed there. Yep. Cool. All right, well, I think that's it then. So stay tuned for next time with Community Committee, and thank you all for joining.
Bye.
Talk to you all later. Bye.